Welcome back to Bearcats Mean Business. Today's guest is Matt Booher, Vice President of Data Solutions at EW Scripps Company. Matt is one of two keynote speakers for the Center for Business Analytics' upcoming Data Science Symposium, which is slated for Thursday, October 9th at Lindner Hall. The symposium's theme is AI and Analytics in Action. Matt's career path has taken him deep into the world of AI and analytics at Scripps. From navigating the fast-changing media landscape to positioning his teams for the future, Matt has seen firsthand how data and technology are rewriting the rules of business. In today's episode, Matt and Center for Business Analytics Executive Director Georgette Angulo Ramirez will explore Matt's journey into AI, his perspective on where data and analytics are taking the industry next, and preview his Data Science Symposium keynote, Data Goes Live, How Scripps is Evolving AI and Analytics. Georgette and Matt will also dig into practical advice for students, including the skills to sharpen now, the value of co-op experiences, and how to turn opportunities into career momentum. Without further ado, here's Matt and Georgette.
Thank you very much, Grant. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at Scripps and how you got into AI and analytics?
Okay, yeah. So my role at Scripps is VP of Data Solutions. And what that really means is just managing the data for the company and then managing the people and the processes where people interact with that data. That includes data governance, that includes data engineering, that includes data analytics, that includes program management for the data initiatives, and then that requires deep collaboration with our infrastructure team, our cybersecurity team, our research team, and then just business leaders in general. So a lot coming at me on a daily basis.
Yes, so even more so grateful for you spending time with us. As you were saying, you are basically in charge of every part of the business that needs to lead the journey of analytics and AI. And my question to you now is, how has that journey evolved for Scripps, and what have been some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, so I've been with Scripps for 10 years. I began as Director of Digital Analytics, which was really focused on the analytics needs of the business as it related to our digital products. So for us, digital products means mobile applications, connected TV applications, websites, and the relationships with our streaming distributors. So those partners that we work with, say Roku, Hulu, whomever, managing the data that's being generated by our presence on those platforms and then delivering that back to data leadership. Over time, that evolved into some first-party data management work where we're working with our sales organization to identify core audiences that are using our products and then work with them to develop targeted advertising strategies. And then subsequently now, just sort of in my evolution at the organization, I'm now responsible for not only that business-facing aspect of the analytics operation, but also dealing with the back-end management of all of that data.
So you just walked us through the journey as it entails the data ingestion and how that has been just accumulating. In terms of the challenges, as you said, the back end, the structure, the administration of that, what would you say has been the hardest part about that process and the order in which you guys have taken on?
Yeah, so I think most people might answer the volume of data. I think in our industry, that's not necessarily the case. Being a broadcaster, what we're dealing with is the fragmentation of the data. And so what I mean by that is all of the different sources that we need to acquire data from to be able to pull all that together to either give the research team the ability to provide a unified view of our audiences across all those different platforms. It might be dealing with the fragmentation of what we refer to as currency providers, so the ratings data that's associated with what we're doing on our linear business, where we're actually broadcasting over the air through our local markets. We have 63 stations in about 45 markets. Don't quote me on that because it's always changing. And then our national network, so ION Plus, Court TV, all of the fragmentation of that data and all of the different places where that programming is available. So we're dealing with just a large number of data providers. The data sets themselves may not be large or they may not be complex, but the complexity is in the scale at which we're trying to operate and acquire that data, then transform it into something useful for the business. So for us, it's not necessarily, hey, we have 10 billion records. It's more, we have 80 or 90 data sources that we're trying to bring into a unified view, into a master data model, so that we can then easily distribute that data to our business partners as needed.
That sounds very tricky, and also it brings me back to times where I've had to work on different division data and having to make sense of how something as simple as how people decide to title their columns in a data set, and how, we've talked about this before, how somebody might spell out the company's name and somebody might use an abbreviation, and the amount of time that it takes for somebody to just go through that.
We are in the middle of that right now. We deal that with programming data, and we deal with that on advertising naming conventions. And I would say that is one place where AI has presented an opportunity. We're doing string matching in a lot of instances. In some cases, we're doing manual mapping of those names. And so we're looking at that as one of the key areas where we can apply some AI intelligence and some automation techniques to be able to clean up that data and get that into our master data model.
So aside from this issue of fragmentation, which is not, like you said, it's the biggest that you see for your industry, but it's actually common for almost every single industry, because not only are they taking data from different places, they're taking new sets of data constantly. How else do you see AI and analytics shaping or impacting the media industry?
I don't even know where to start. I think that's a big challenge within our organization today. I think for us, it started with ethics. So being a broadcast company, being a journalism company, I think the first thing that we needed to do was understand, what are the guardrails going to be? What are we going to maintain? How are we going to maintain our journalistic integrity on that side of the business, from sort of the news gathering and journalism operation? And then how do we instruct or guide the employees of the organization to take advantage of the opportunity that AI presents, maybe in their individual role or across their team, and help them understand what responsibilities they have to the company and to the company's data before they just start going out and spinning up, firing up a chat GPT or firing up a Claude and, loading up a spreadsheet with our information in it, and then just sort of, trying to get insight. It's all well intended. It's not being done in a malicious way, but having people understand what those governance principles are. So you have the journalism ethics piece, and then you sort of have the data governance piece that you really have to be thinking about. And the way that we solved that at Scripps is we developed a tool called Engine Room. And so our AI group, led by Christina Hartman and Carrie Osland, they really sort of began this push to say, hey, we want you to use this. We're encouraging you to use this. We don't know what the opportunities are, but those of you that are working with the data on a day-to-day basis, you could probably be very instructive in what we could do. So the first thing we did was just spin up an environment that was firewalled within our environment, leveraging the API capabilities of those AI modeling companies, and say, play. Just see what you can do, see what you can figure out. And that's been very useful. That's been very useful, and it's allowed us to identify a number of different use cases. One, that we can identify low effort, high productivity opportunities with AI. And then the second thing is using all of that different activity to inform what might be able to be done at scale that we're not currently able to do today.
Really appreciate you bringing up the points of ethics, because I have a daughter in college right now, and she's taking an ethics class, and the first thing she said is, I did not know this was going to be so hard. Which I think it's so true. So much reading and so much thinking deep. Would you say for students who are preparing to enter fields where, and I don't know any field that will not be impacted by AI, what would you be your recommendation for how they prepare themselves to enter the workforce?
I would start with the ethics piece. I would understand that if you're entering into the workforce, there are certain responsibilities and obligations you have to your employer, particularly if they're a publicly traded company, that you need to be aware of and be thinking about when you do your job on a daily basis. There's the foundational piece, which are the skills. And that's why you go to school. That's why you get the education, so that you have that foundation. I think a lot of students make the mistake of coming into the workplace with those skills and not recognize that that's just the beginning, that that's the foundation.
Table stakes.
It's going to get you through the door, but then how you conduct yourself when you're in the building is really going to be the differentiator for you in terms of whether or not you're going to be able to grow your career or move your career in a certain direction. The skills themselves just facilitate that, and it's how you apply them, and it's how you conduct yourself in the workplace that's going to make a significant difference in where your career ends up going.
That is so true. We even had a conversation just recently with one of our members at the CBA and asking them what are you looking for in students that are going to be in a co-op or intern program, and they said in addition to the basics, which are being able to do the job, I want students with strong emotional intelligence. And so there goes something that, again, we don't give enough credit, but it does make a difference in the workplace. Experiential learning and co-op is a big piece of how Lindner prepares students for their lifelong journey. How would you recommend students turn those experiences into learning for their professional careers?
I know that when I was in college, the number one assignment that I hated the most was a group project. I hated them. There's so much chaos. There's so much confusion. Where are you going to meet? When are you going to meet? What are we agreeing on to deliver for our final project? All those types of things are exactly what the business and workplace is all about.
Yeah, what part of your day isn't a group project?
Correct.
Right?
And so that's the biggest challenge with young people coming into the workplace, is explaining to them and helping them understand that that is the work. Your expertise, I'm already assuming that to be true. Your expertise, what you know technically, what you might know statistically, what you might know from a industry standpoint, or what works and what doesn't work, I'm already assuming that to be true. And then it's really about how are you collaborating with your peers. I always tell folks, if you don't comment your code or you don't leave something behind for someone to be able to follow up on and finish, it's a science fair project. It doesn't create value for the company. You did it, that's great. I'm not going to give you a grade. What I want to know is, can we pick up where you left off and move it forward? Or if I have to shift work in the department, can someone else pick up where you left off? Did you leave enough behind for them to understand how they can move this forward? So those types of things, I think that's where I see students struggle the most when they enter the workplace, is understanding those dynamics and how to navigate those appropriately, and not just say like, hey, look what I did. Isn't this fantastic? Yes. Now, if I handed it off to someone else on the team, or I handed it off to a business partner, do they know what's going on? So that I think is absolutely essential that students need to take away from this conversation, is that those skills and that technological expertise and that talent that they do have is just the beginning,
That's a great perspective, and something that I'm going to share. I'm going to share this podcast episode with my kids because they need to hear it. Not just from me, but also from somebody
that's hiring.
that has been really successful in this field in hiring, yes. Let's move on to the big event that we are all working to put together on October 9th, which is our Data Science Symposium. You have been kind enough to agree to be one of our keynote speakers. We're super excited. You're going to bring some real talk, is how I like to describe it to people based on our interactions. How would you describe what they can expect from your keynote?
So I think the keynote is going to focus on a couple of things. I think the first thing it's going to focus on is the evolution of the data space. It kind of began as a centralized BI operation, and then we got into data science, and we developed all these capabilities where you could have full stack developers. Then it became an operational thing where you wanted to scale those activities of those data science through like machine learning ops and things like that. And now we're faced with this AI challenge. And if you skipped any of those steps along the way, you're going to have a hard time with AI. You just need to know that you're continually building your foundation. And while the thing that comes out the other side might be sexy and really appealing and gets the business folks excited or the leadership excited, it's going to be really flimsy if you're not laying down that foundation and then thinking really, really hard about what the employees are doing and what they need to do their jobs. Look, there's a lot of talk out there about how AI is going to take jobs, that like it's going to gut entry-level positions. I don't necessarily, my personal perspective is I don't necessarily see that happening, because everything that we do in our organization has a human in the loop. That might mean your job changes, that might mean your job evolves. And that's what the keynote's going to talk about, is like, what are those practical things you need to think about? Look, there's the theory, there's the technology, there's all the cool things we can do, but really at the end of the day, it's how do you make that work in an organization?
I think everyone will really be ready to hear that, and especially from folks in the field, folks who are not only experiencing being part of the journey, but leading it. Mm-hmm. So really appreciate you saying that. And just to wrap up, if people can take one thing away from this episode, what would that be?
Well, I think I touched on it. I think the foundations are just the beginning. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything you learn, look, you can be a great coder, you can be a great technician, you can understand infrastructure, you can optimize your infrastructure, you can do all of these really cool things with the technologies that are available to us today. But you have to consider the people part of what you're doing. And then you have to consider the fact that you're doing that in an organization that is looking to you to create value for that organization. And so those two other things that I'm talking about from the people collaboration standpoint and the value creation standpoint are basically the three legs of the stool, to borrow a worn out business analogy, right? You got the technical piece, you have the people piece, but then you have to be thinking about what value you're creating.
Absolutely. And value is influence. And I think that's what most people are looking to achieve in their lifetime, is to be able to influence those who work around them.
Mm-hmm. That's a wrap on today's episode of Bearcats Mean Business. Thank you to Georgette for hosting, and to Matt Booher for coming on to share his expertise. A friendly reminder to register for the upcoming Data Science Symposium on October 9th at the Carl H. Lindner College of Business. Visit business.uc.edu/data-science to register. That's business.uc.edu/data-science to register. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to take the leap at Lindner. Your feedback helps more Bearcats discover the show. Until next time, keep showing the world how Bearcats mean business.